You've probably heard of GitHub, and you're gonna need to use it in your day job, in your client projects, in your open source projects. It's used everywhere, and it's a lot to learn. It can do so much. It can host your projects, your repositories. You can use GitHub Pages to actually have static site hosting. You can customize your GitHub profile so you stand out from the crowd like a portfolio, like a resume. With so many things that you can do on this platform, I understand how it can be scary and not know where to start, especially with all the terminology like forks, commits, pushing, upstream, issues, pull requests. There's so much to learn. So in this video, I'm gonna focus on the repository page that you see behind me. And I'm gonna break down what the terms mean and how to use it and how you can accelerate your learning, your career, grow your network, and make the best out of your journey. Real quick, before we get into the details of GitHub, let's give a shout out to this video's sponsor, Talent.io. Are you a developer or have another role in tech and want to work in Europe? Sometimes it's difficult to know what salary to expect. Talent.io has put together the European Tech Salary Report, built from the analysis of over 100,000 contact requests on the website and is based on medium salaries, which will give you great advice on salary expectations in the tech industry. I downloaded this report for free and had a look at their results. And as a JavaScript developer, it was great to see JavaScript was the most popular in Europe. Well, apart from Belgium. And you know what is great about the report? It gets updated every year. So join Talent Club for free to receive the full report straight in your inbox. You can find the download link to the free report in the description below. Now back to GitHub. First, you need to register with GitHub. It's completely free and you just need an email address. And you'll be presented with a wizard that kind of changes, they update it. So just follow those instructions and set your preferences, and you can always change those later on. Once you've registered and you log in, you'll be presented with your dashboard that will look something similar to this. I'll do a specific video on going through this, but it's great to see your feed, your timeline. You get to see what other people, you can see Ashwin has started a repository and so has Sam. I get to see what other projects people are working on. It's a great way to understand what is going on and what the other developers and techies are doing in the industry. The other thing you probably want to look at first is your profile. And your profile will look something like this. Mine is quite customized. It's taken me years to get to this, and it's by no means perfect, so any improvements do let me know. But it will look something like this. And I have got specific videos and free courses on how to customize this. So again, I'm not going to cover that in this video. So what I'm going to cover is the repository page. This will probably look familiar to you already, but do you know what all the tabs and buttons mean? Well, we're going to go through that. I want to explain to you kind of the benefits and which ones you should focus on. So let's start off at the top of the page. So right at the top here, we have the owner of the repository, and the repository is also known as a project. Don't confuse this with a project board. That is something different that I'll show you later on. And the reason why they're similar now is a repo started off with just the files that you see below. But nowadays, because there is issue tracking, there is code review, there is discussions, and there's continuous integration. I want to explain what those terms mean shortly. That now it's more of a project than a repo, but we still use the word repo. So if I call link-free repo or project, they are the same thing. So the owner of the repo or project, in this case, is an organization, a GitHub community, but this could also be a person, so a personal account or an organization. And then the name afterwards is the name of the project or the repository. And it must be unique within the account. So within the GitHub community, link-free is a unique name. And here you can see it's public. You won't see private ones unless you've got access to them. So if you've got access to them and they're private, then it will say private here. If they're private and you try to access them, you will just get a 404 page not found. Then going right along the top, let's go to the far right, we have stars. So here you can support a project or you can bookmark it for later. It costs you nothing, but it's a great way to star a project, and the maintainers love that. So if you are interested in a project, you can support by starring it. And if you star a lot of projects, you want to bookmark a lot, you can actually break these down into categories. So I have got must share, keep watching, interested, funny. You can create your own list, and it's a great way to curate your list and keep an eye on these as well. What a fork is it allows you to take a copy of a project and put it in your own account or organization, somewhere where you've got permission. So for example, if I wanted to contribute to a project that I didn't have access to, I can, but I need to fork it to somewhere where I can make changes to it. So by forking it, you're making a copy of the entire project, all its branches, all its tags, all that stuff. and then I can make changes to it and submit those back. And again, I'm going to show you that shortly, so don't worry too much about it, but just understand that fork is making a copy of the project to somewhere where you have permissions where you can make changes to it. So when you click the fork button, it'll ask you where you want to fork it to. Most of the time, it will just be your personal account, and then you've got a copy of it in your personal account. So if I was to click on fork and I forked it to my personal account, it would then here say Eddie Jowd, link free, so it'll keep the same project name, and you could rename it if you wanted to. And underneath it, it would say forked from, and it would be forked from this name. Then next we have watch. So when you start a project, it appears in your timeline that I showed you right at the beginning. It appears in this timeline when you get activity from it. However, you might want to get more notifications about the project so you can get involved in the discussions and the comments. And if you're really interested in doing that, then you can click watch, and that will send you every notification. The way you receive that notification will depend on your settings on your actual GitHub profile. So if you've got emails or app notifications or whatever it is, it will just use those settings. But you can customize it further if you don't want all the activity. By default, it would be all once you click it, and you can in fact ignore, and then you can do custom notifications as well. So for this one, I had all activity originally, but with the project growing and growing, I was getting too many notifications, and the amazing maintainers were taking care of 99.9% of them. So now I've changed it, whereas if I'm participating, that means if I start a discussion or an issue or a pull request, then I'll get notified for that conversation. Or if someone app mentions me, I also want to get notified too. Then pins, this is more for a maintainer. So as a maintainer of this project, I can see where it is pinned. And I've pinned it to the organization. I've pinned it also to the private version of the organization and to my profile as well. You might see that for projects you could pin as well, or for projects that you own. GitHub Sponsors is a great way to support projects financially. You can donate $1 a month, $5 a month to the project or to the person. So I have this set up to be donated to me. So big shout out to all our sponsors. I really appreciate it. But again, you don't have to worry too much about it. I highly recommend setting up GitHub Sponsors on your account. It's a great way if you do some great contributions, especially consistently, then someone might want to sponsor you some money. The amount of times I wanted to say thank you to someone and give them $5 or $10, but they haven't got it set up. And GitHub Sponsors is in around 70 countries now. So it's coming to a country near you. And if it's not available in your country yet, do sign up to get notified when it is, and also show them that you're interested in that country. So therefore they can maybe prioritize that a bit higher. So now you know the whole top bar. We have all these scary tabs along the top, but we're gonna demystify them for you. And then we have all these down the side. But before we get into that, I wanna talk about commits. And the reason I do is because commits are involved in pull requests, they're involved in releases, and all those sorts of things. So a commit is effectively a save point in your project. So if you make changes that you're happy with, you can commit it. You can make a commit. If you're making changes locally and you do a commit, remember that it's only available on your laptop or on your computer. So you have made a save, you have made a change, and it's a save point. It's not going to change. Remember to push it to GitHub. If you're using the UI, which you can do, and I'll show you how you can do that later on, these files do have pens on them, so you can edit them directly on the GitHub UI, then you don't need to do a push, you need to just do a commit, and GitHub will take care of the rest for you. So with the repo, you can actually see the commit history. So for this project, for this repo, we can see we've had almost 1,700 commits. If I click on that, it will show us the commit history. So the last commit was 18 hours ago. This is the pull request it's assigned to, and you can also see what changed in that commit if you wanted to. So if I click on it, we can actually see the changes that occurred, and we can leave comments. And we're going to get to the comments shortly. But I just want you to remember for now that commits are a save point, and these are all the save points. So we can roll back to these save points. We can see the changes in these save points. We can even undo a save point. There is a command called git revert, where if you use git revert and you put in this unique hash, what it will do, it will make a new commit, so a new save point, but then with the complete opposite changes. So for example, if I try and pick this one, so this is a commit by me, and you can see on the left here, I removed this and I added the name deploy. Whereas if I did a git revert on this commit using the unique hash, it would do the complete opposite, and it would effectively make this red on the right, and on the left, this would all be green and it would go back. So it's a really easy thing to do if you want to undo things. Also note that there are two types of hashes, but they are the same and point to the same commit. You can see here, this hash is really long. It is the full hash, whereas on the previous page, these are an abbreviated shorter hash. Let's go back to the main landing page of the repo, which is the code tab. Now you understand what commits are. We can talk more about branches and releases and all the other interesting, exciting things. Hopefully you're still following along. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe below and hit the bell button so you get notified every time I post a video and go live. So the first drop down we have here is branches. And what branches is, they're kind of similar to forks, but rather than taking a copy to a new account, you can take a copy within the current account. So it's still within the same repo, the same project, but it is now in a branch. So here we've got various branches. We've got main, which is our default branch, and that's what most people use on GitHub. But then you can see we have some other branches as well. And if you create a new branch, so for example, if I was going to create a branch called test, it would say create branch test from main. And these files and commits that we just looked at are in the main branch as it says main here. But if I was to create this test branch from the main branch, it would look exactly the same. It would have the last commit would be from this person. It would say have the same title, the same hash, everything would be the same. But it allows me to work in parallel. And most of the time we want changes to happen in a branch because then someone else can review it before we merge it into the main branch. Because if you break something in the main branch, it breaks it for everyone who's using that branch. So ideally, you want to do things in a branch. And even if you're using a fork, I highly recommend using a branch in your fork as well. So you're kind of taking a copy for your fork and you're taking a copy within your fork to be in a branch. The reason for that is you always want your fork, the default branch main in your fork, to be the same as this main branch. I know it's getting a bit confusing, but always try to remember, make all changes in a new branch from main, no matter where you're making those changes on the original repo or on a forked version. Trust me, it will save you so much pain. You'll get less conflicts. It's super important. But some other tips on branches as we're talking about it, make sure branches are short-lived. The longer you keep a branch open, the more likely you're going to get conflicts and have files and changes conflict with you. So you might create more work for yourself. Another thing you can do is keep your branch up to date. So as I mentioned, you make your changes in a branch, and then when it's ready, you get it reviewed in a pull request, which I'll show you shortly. And then once it's accepted, it gets merged into main. But you can also merge main into your branch to keep it updated. And the advantage of that is there's going to be less divergence between the two branches. This all sounds quite scary, but once you get started, trust me, it is not as scary as it sounds. So I think you understand what branches are, and you need to have a try to understand it. It's one of those things. Remember, on GitHub, you can't do anything wrong. So if in doubt, just click it, have a play. The worst thing that you do is you create an extra notification for someone, but you won't break anything. Do not worry. And if anything ever gets broken, it's always fixable as well. So do not worry. That's the beauty of Git and GitHub. So now you know what branches are. We've got a link here to see all the branches as well. I want to talk about tags. Tags and releases down here on the right are very similar. So Git, that underpins the GitHub repo, has tags, but GitHub made it kind of even nicer by using releases. So when you create a release, it creates a tag, but when you create a tag, it might not create a release. And the reason for that is on the GitHub releases, you can add more information. You can add a changelog. Let's go have a look at one and see. So if I click on this release, we've got a number, and again, that would be the same as the tag, but here we could actually have more information about the release of the tag. So most of the time we use those two words to be the same, and it's not entirely true, but most of the time it is, because most of the time we create a release on GitHub, and then GitHub will create a Git tag for us. But we're going to come to the releases section shortly. But I'm just mentioning tags and releases because you see them up here. So, and what a tag and release is a collection of commits. So this commit 18 hours ago happened, and if I created 2 or 3 more commits, and maybe you created one as well, and I'm like, right, I want to package that up into a release so that people know that that's stable, like we're really happy with that, and we've tested it maybe a bit more, and it's got a few more reviews and so forth, we'll put that as a release. And it will get a hash, but it won't have any new code in it. Does that make sense? Let me repeat that and give another example. So this commit happened 18 hours ago. The commit contains its own changes, but also all the historic changes. If we created a release from that commit, and a release must be created from a commit, then it will contain everything in that commit and before it. So there's no difference, but we're effectively saying we're really happy with this set of changes and working backwards historically. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, leave a comment below and I will reply to you and hopefully explain it a lot better. So other things you can do on the top, if you want to navigate around GitHub, yes, you can click on these and you can navigate around and try and find the file you want. But another thing that you can do, which is really awesome, is you can go to files. If you know the name of the file, so if I wanted to find, for example, my JSON file, I could click that button, type it in, and it'll auto-complete here, and I can go straight to the file. And I can click back on any of the parent directories and go back to that stage in the file tree. If you want to add a file, you can either create a file or you can upload a file. Upload a file is like uploading an image to Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, and create a file will give me 2 fields. Actually, give me 3 fields. So one is the name of the file. So this might just be test.txt. And you can also put paths in here, remember. So if I wanted to go test, you can see now as I put the / in, it automatically added a folder in there. And if I type test2 / again, I've got another child folder in there. And in here, you can make changes to your file. You can preview the changes as well. And also, this is the commit. This is how you make a commit directly on GitHub. You need to give the commit a title. And that's the only required information. I recommend keeping this short, about 50 characters. And then underneath, you can add extra information. And then you're given the option, because I'm the owner of this repo, and you'd be the owner of your fork, you could commit directly back to main. However, I recommend, as always, commit to a branch. It will suggest the branch name, and you can change this as well. But I want to hit cancel. I'm not going to commit that. Yes, I'll leave the page. So now you know how you can add a file to the project in any directory. Let's have a look down the right-hand side. So this is also really interesting information about the project. So down the right-hand side, we've got the about section. So we've got a description, and it's really important you have a read about this. It should give you an idea about what the project is. And if you're a maintainer, make sure you're using this. And then a link is usually to the deployed version, or if it's a library, it might be to NPM package or Docker Hub or something like that, or even just the docs. I think people should make use of this link. Go check it out. It's probably the most important link of the repo if they've put it up there. And then you've got topics. And topics allow you to find similar projects to the project they're looking at. For example, this is Link3 project, an open source alternative to Linktree. But here we use JavaScript and React. And if I click on one of these, it actually is a link. It'll take me to the search on GitHub and show me other repositories, it's quite a lot, that are using the similar sort of topic. So it's a great way to go and find other projects that you want to contribute to. I'm going to give you some tips on that shortly on how you can find friendly open source projects to contribute to. Then we also have the Readme, which if I click on it, it'll take us down to underneath the files. Every readme.md will always appear under the file list. So if I go into Cypress, for example, if this had a readme.md file, it would appear under the file list as well. So do make use out of that. I think that's quite important. You can put your documentation in the relevant folders, or you could put it in a docs folder as well. There is a wiki on GitHub. I have hidden the tab up here for now because wikis are great, but I actually think it's better to have the documentation within the file or the code base. The reason for that is it's treated like a first-class citizen, and I think it is important that documentation gets reviewed through pull requests, which I'll show you shortly, just like code automated testing would as well. This is why I disabled the wiki, not because I don't like documentation, I think it's super important. So most documentation starts off in the README, but when it grows too big, then you start moving it to a docs folder or to the relevant folder. Got a license. Before contributing to an open source project, make sure it has a license. If it doesn't have a license, that doesn't mean it's more open, it actually means it's more closed. You'll default to the GitHub T's and C's, terms and conditions, which means you can fork the project, and I think you can make changes to it, but you can't actually use it. So I would check, make sure they're using a license that you're happy with. MIT is a very popular and open and permissive license. Code of conduct. When you're contributing to a project, make sure it has a code of conduct. I think that's really important, and I'm going to show you how you can check if the code of conduct is not only there, well, we can see it's here now, but is it enforced? And that's really important too, because you want to make sure you have a good experience, especially if you're giving up your time to contribute to open source projects, but you want to network and grow and learn with these people and collaborate with them. So you want to make sure it's a friendly project. How many stars? You can see it says 1.1 up here, matches at the top. How many people watching and how many forks as well. Again, matches the same information I showed you earlier. Releases, you know what they are. So if you click on this specific release, it's a collection of commits. And if I click on the release title, it's actually going to show us a list of all the releases. We have quite a few. So you can see this is the latest release, but then we have historic releases. And if you want to know what these numbers mean, Well, it uses a standard called semver. And what that means is the first number, so in this case, 0 is the major. Then the second number, in this case, 76 is the minor. And then in this case, the 1 is the build. And what does that mean? Well, let's start off at the right-hand side this time. So when the last digit, the third digit gets incremented, you can see from 0 to 1 here, it means that a bug fix went in. So it's the build number. So a bug fix went in, and it's probably not going to, have a massive effect on anybody using the project. And then if you come along to the next number, so you can see here, it was 0.75.1 and it jumped to 0.76. And what causes the middle number, the minor, to jump is that a feature was added. So it's a bit more of a change. And so we want to show that that's more of a change, and people maybe want to do some extra checks before they use the project, if they're using it in their project or they've got a deployed version and they want to update the deployed version. And then the first digit is a major release, and that usually means a complete refactor, rewrite, something serious. You should use that with caution when you're using it. And this is all done by a GitHub action, which I'm going to show you shortly, which is automation. So we don't actually calculate these ourselves. When someone does a commit, we write in the commit message if it's a fix or if it's a feature. Then the GitHub action knows what number to bump, and it also keeps track of what we're currently on, so it knows what the next number is. But that's releases. And just like on a commit, you can click on the hash and you can see exactly the changes that happened in that release as well. And then the sponsored section is just the same as the sponsored right at the top that I showed you earlier. And packages, okay. So packages is something else I want to try and explain. And what makes it a bit more complicated is GitHub supports multiple types of packages. So in this case, our package is a Docker container, and we package our project into a Docker container. And I don't want to get into Docker, but think of it like a virtual machine, but more smaller. That's why it's called a container. And we package it up, again, on a GitHub action, on automation. Each time there's a release, then it gets packaged up and gets deployed to our Kubernetes cluster. But don't worry about those terms for now. What I want to explain is a package could be a deployable container, but it could also be a library. So if you use JavaScript and you use the package manager NPM, packages on GitHub also support NPM packages. So on a library, this would be an NPM package, or another one supported by Python or Ruby and so forth. But the point I'd like you to be aware of is you might have more than one of these, but you shouldn't have different types. A library wouldn't be deployable, so you wouldn't have a container, and you wouldn't have a package for a different platform. For example, it is rare, very rare, I don't think I've ever seen it, where you'd have one for NPM and then one for Python, like pip, for example, and so on. So usually you only have one type of package. Although GitHub supports multiple, you'd only have kind of one type for that repository. But if I'm wrong, let me know in the description below. I always love to learn. That's why I'm here to have these conversations with you, to share my knowledge, but also to learn from you as well. And your questions really help me learn. So any questions, please let me know in the description below. And it really helps support the channel as well, because YouTube will think, hey, this video is good. They left a comment. And while you're down there, leaving a comment, give the video a thumbs up, please. Thank you. And so contributors, these are the people who have made pull requests and they've been merged into the project. You get green squares on your profile for doing more than pull requests. And let me quickly show that to you now, actually. So if I go back to my profile, these are the green squares that people talk about when they're talking about open source and GitHub. And when you create a pull request, yes, you do appear here on the contributors side to that repository, but also when you raise an issue, when you do a commit, when you review someone's pull request, you also get a green square. And underneath that, if it is enabled on your account, which I highly recommend you do enable it, it actually gives you a split of kind of where your activity is happening. So you can see 39% of my stuff is happening on commits, 32% on code reviews, 23% on issues, and pull requests are only 6%. And you want to try and even that out if you can. It is hard, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I probably need to work more on my pull requests. So do you need any contributions to your open source projects? Maybe I can submit some pull requests to your open source projects. Now you know the outside of the code page, we can dig a bit deeper, and then we're going to run across all of these tabs along the top as well. So make sure you're comfortable, have a drink ready, pause if you need to, but I'm having fun and I hope you are too. This is the Readme that I mentioned to you earlier, and if you want to make any improvements to the Readme, you can hit the edit button and GitHub will automatically fork it for you, and so you can make changes and all that great stuff. I have an animated GIF in here. I highly recommend taking screenshots and adding an animated GIF. If you go to a repository that doesn't have that, then maybe that's a good contribution that you can make. It's really important. You can add so much value by being new to a project. When people come to say, I don't know, the Link3 project and say, hey, Eddie, can you tell me more about the project? I say, no. Can you look at the project and tell me if you understand it? Does it make sense? If it doesn't, then there's nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with our project and you can help us improve it. So being new to a project or being new to tech, you can really help the maintainers and help the community by by asking questions and saying, I followed your steps, but it didn't work. Then by you sharing what you tried, what platform you're on, what browser you're using, whatever is relevant to what you're trying to do, then they can make improvements and you can make improvements for the next person so the project can get better and better. This project is pretty good. It's got a lot of automation, automated testing, but this didn't happen on day one. This has taken like years to get here, and it's because of all your amazing help. So keep adding value and keep asking questions. I know you're excited to go on to the next tab, so let's jump along. So on the issues tab, an issue is like a task or a feature or a bug, something where you can log some information so people can discuss it. And you're gonna notice I say a lot of collaboration, discussions going on. Changes are actually a small part of open source, and even any developer role. Coding is very, very small, and you're gonna see why. So these are the issues we have open, and we can click on an issue and go and see more details. We've got the labels for the issue. So we've got low priority, it's part of Hacktoberfest. So if people want to make the improvements, they can. And if you click on these, it also filters the issues based on what we clicked on the label. But also you can filter by author, label we can do in this dropdown or by clicking on it as I just did, by projects, and I'm going to show you projects shortly. Milestones we're probably not using. And if it's assigned to someone, if someone says, hey, it's assigned to me, you can go and find it quite easily. But hopefully they can give you the number as well. We've got our closed issues and our open ones. But let's just clear the search and you see the numbers will climb up a lot more. Let's go into an issue and see what we have. So if we go into an issue, you can see that you've got a title along the top, the person who created the issue has given, and also a description. And a screenshot really helps. So I always highly recommend thinking of your issue to be read by somebody who doesn't know much about the project or know what you're thinking, that they're not in your mind. And that way it adds value and also allows more people to get involved in the conversation. So this is the issue. It was opened 2 days ago. And also it was made by a member. You can give a reaction to the issue too. And in here, you've got the timeline of the issue. So like a pull request, which I'll show you shortly, you get a timeline of all the activities. So this label was added, and then the bot gave a reply, and then more labels were added by Tom. So thank you so much, Tom. Really appreciate it. And then other people are commenting, and then you can see a pull request has been opened, which we'll get to shortly. And then I could leave a comment here as well. So you can see an issue is someone trying to log an idea, or they found a bug, and then people can collaborate and discuss this in the issue and keep it all in one place. So down the side, it can be assigned to somebody. So we can assign it to people. It has the labels that we spoke about. It can be added to a project board, which I'll show you shortly, or a milestone. A milestone is a bit like a release, but for issues. So it allows you to collect issues together. So you can say next month, we want to get all these issues done. And you can still move things around if things take longer or get quicker. And the project board is like a Trello project board and allows you to kind of drag and drop between, to do, in progress, and done. You can add your own columns, and I'll show you that shortly. So don't leave the video just yet. And I'm not involved in this issue, so I'm not getting notifications, but I can also subscribe if I wanted to get notifications specifically for this issue. Shows you who's participating. We can also lock the conversations if it's getting off topic. Again, these are probably more for maintainers, not the owner of the project, but people maintaining the project. We can pin the issue, we can transfer it, we can convert it to a discussion, and we can do same with a discussion back to an issue, which I think is next on our list. Now we'll do pull requests, then discussions. I'm gonna go in order with what we have along the top. And we can delete the issue, which I don't think I've ever used. I'd rather kind of leave a comment and close it. It's great to have that history. So now you know what an issue is. How do you create one? Well, you can hit new. And some projects have templates to make your life a bit easier and to make the maintainer's life a bit easier. So if you hit new and it has templates, then you'll get listed with this. If it doesn't have templates, you will not get this. You will go straight to the next page, but you won't have so many form fields. You will just have the title and one box below the description, and that's it. If you're a maintainer on a project, I highly recommend having templates. If you want to contribute to a project and they don't have templates, I highly recommend adding templates. Again, that's a great way to add value to the project. I think that's really important, and the maintainers will love you for it. And you can look at other projects to see what templates they're using and use some of their ideas into your own templates that you can contribute to. In this issue, it's a bug, it's asking for title and description, but only the description and title are required. Screenshots and additional information are optional. And you can submit a new issue and it will appear in the issue list. I mentioned milestones, so I'm just going to click on milestones and show you briefly. We don't actually have any, but again, it's a collection of issues. So a milestone will get a name, and you can give it an optional date and a description, and then you can add issues to that milestone. And you can reorder them within the milestone, but people are using project boards more. So actually, as we're on that topic, let me jump to project boards on the top. And we've got a project board here, and this is what a project board looks like. This is the Version 2, it's more tabular, you can customize it, you can have a lot of automation. But the version 1 looks more like this, where you have your columns, and these are the default columns. It's called Kanban columns, but you can add your own as well. And then once you add the issue to the project board, you can drag it and drop between the columns and move things around as well. So it's a great way to get planning with the community, and they can see what's, next on the list. Is it this one? Or is it this one? And is it assigned to someone? What labels has it got as well? So it's a great way to see the project. Okay, so we've covered projects already, but let's get to pull requests because I know you're super interested. So a pull request is like an issue. So if you understand what an issue is, and I'm sure you do, then a pull request is almost exactly the same. The only difference is it has changes to the project. So remember, it's like an issue, but with changes attached to it. So on an issue, we collaborate. On a pull request, we have some changes, but we also collaborate and we review each other's work. And I'll show you how you can do inline reviews and how you can do, overall comments and things like that. So these are the pull requests are coming in. So let me pick a pull request. So on this pull request list page, very similar to the issue list, we can filter by label, author, milestone, assignee, and so forth. And you can see the labels, and you can also, click on these if you want, and it will filter the list to do that. But let me pick one and show you the anatomy, the details of a pull request. So a pull request, again, it looks similar to an issue, right? You get a title, you get a unique number, just like you did with issues, and then you get a description. But the difference here is it has files changes attached to it. So I've given it a description, but then you can click on this and see the files changed. And these are the files changed. You can see I removed this and I added a few lines here. And you can also see people have commented in line. And that's why it's a great way to add value to a project, is to review other people's pull requests. So you could come along here and you could click on the plus in line, and then you could leave a comment and you could say, I like this, even just something positive. It doesn't have to be negative. It can be constructive, but also it can be positive as well. So you can comment in line, and even when people comment in line, it still appears, just like with the issue, with the timeline. So here I did the commit, again, I get the hash, and the bot's done a response, and I've done some more commits. And now people have done some, this is not an inline comment, this is a comment at almost like the issue level. But here you can see Naomi has done an inline comment and made some suggestions as well. And we're talking about that specific code. And it's a great way to collaborate with people and learn. It's super, super important. The other difference is if we have any automation, so in this case we have 2 automation, and you can see they both passed. But you can also see I've got a conflict. So I've left the PR open for a little bit too long, and someone else has made a change to a file and a line that I've made a change to. So don't worry about conflicts, they're gonna happen. Like if you're new to tech or you've been here for a long time, whatever it is, it's gonna happen. So you just need to learn how to resolve the conflict. And usually it's quite straightforward. So just on a side note, let's just hit resolve and see how it looks, and I can explain how I would resolve it. So I've hit resolve, and what Git does is shows you the changes that I made and the changes that someone else made. And GitHub presents this quite nicely. So it highlights this. If there are more files, they'll be listed down the left, but in this case, it's just one file. And here it says, I've made this change from these kind of less than brackets all the way to these equal brackets. And it's named it for my branch. So these are my changes in here. And then you can see from the main branch is the bit after the equals to the greater than symbol to main. So that's what they've changed. So if we were on different lines in the same file, Git would handle that for us and merge the file together. But because we've changed the same lines, Git doesn't know which one we want. And we might want one, we might want the other, we might want a mixture of both. That's something that we can resolve. And once you've kind of just delete this, so in this case, let's have a look together. Your profile needs to be deployed to appear. We tried to collect a few to deploy together. So I think that's pretty good. So what I would do is I would keep it. So I would delete that line. I would also delete this line because you've got to remove those. That's part of Git just to highlight it. And then also delete the opening line. And this is what it will look like. So I'm happy with the warning, but actually I don't want this part of there. So I could actually even move it. So you can move it around. And once you're happy, you just mark as resolved and do another commit. But I want to cancel that for now, but that's basically it. So bottom line is don't worry about conflicts. And if you're unsure, you can ask someone. And there is a way you can find out who the conflict is with, and then you can ask them directly, but the maintainers are really, really helpful. So if I pick a file, for example, like if I pick the Readme file, because that's quite an active and busy file, you've actually got this thing here called blame. And what that does is it's not to blame anyone. It just shows you who changed what line. So here, if I was conflicting on line 1 with this person, I would know to ask this person, well, I've got these changes, you've got these changes, you know, how can we get both of them in, or is yours newer than mine, or is mine newer? So that way you can see. So it's not to point the finger and blame. That is not what open source is about. So the naming is a bit confusing, but it's a great way to find out who made that change, and then you can go chat to that person. Actually, as we're on that note, let's have a look at the things that you can do. So most files you see the code, but with markdown files, it actually gets rendered. So with a markdown file, you actually get to see what it looks like, not the code used to do it. So if you want to see the code, you can click on this, and it will actually show you the code that was used to make that markdown file. And then you click on this to see the preview version. And if you want to edit, you can click edit as well. So every file has this edit button. Let's go back to the pull request again. So you can see this pull request, and I think you pretty much understand the pull request. And what a pull request is when you make a change to a file and you hit that edit button, you request someone else to review it. So let's give that a go and try. So if I go back, I'm going to go to file. I want to make a change to my file. So I want to find my data on Linkfree, click on it. I'm going to hit the edit button. And this is mine, so I can make changes of this. So here we go. So bio, open source DevRel, founder of EddieHub. And I'm going to add another one, which is GitHub star. So I've done that. And then I can scroll to the bottom. And then I'm going to say it was a chore. This is like naming convention that we use. It's called conventional commit messages. You can look into this. It's chore, fix, feature, but don't worry too much about this. Not every project uses it. So I'm going to say it was a chore, and I'm going to say updated my profile. I'm not going to add a description. I'm not going to commit it to main because I want it to get reviewed. Remember, it needs to be in a branch to get reviewed. So I'm going to create it in a branch and propose the changes. And then GitHub straight away says, for my EddieJoud patch 2 branch, which is what I selected, I want it to go into the main branch. That's my proposal. And then this is the description of this. I'm just going to be naughty and not use the template. And I'm going to say updated as part of a YouTube video. And you can hit preview to see what it looks like. And then I want to create pull request. And then this looks familiar to you. We saw it a moment ago. And if I click on files changed, we will actually see what I changed. So you got the line with the light green is what changed, and light red. But what's in dark red and dark green is actually what changed. So it's really specific. And then when you're reviewing someone else's pull request, you can click on review changes. You can leave a comment. I can't approve because it's my own pull request. It would kind of be silly if I could. And people could request changes and leave a comment, and they can also, comment in line. So now you know how to raise a pull request and make changes to someone's project. I highly recommend you raise an issue first. That way you can collaborate with the community before you make an effort on making those changes. But if it's a small change and you're not worried about the collaboration and potentially the pull request not getting accepted, then raise the pull request directly. If you raise an issue first, also, I recommend making the maintainer's life easier by in here saying closes and put in the issue number, like 123, for example. So when the pull request gets merged or closed, then it will automatically close the issue as well. It makes the maintainer's life a lot easier, and they'll thank you for it. I was going to give you a tip on how to find friendly open source projects. So before we go through these other tabs, let's jump straight to the Insights tab, and we'll come back to pull requests in a moment. Go to Insights tab and go to Community Standards. And let's have a look and see, so does the project have a description, code of conduct, contributing file, all these things makes it more friendly. So you can check that straight away and see if they have green ticks. The other thing you can do is go to the pull requests and go to the closed pull requests. This is a hot tip. And these ones that have been closed, but they could be merged or closed. The ones that are purple have been merged. The ones that have been red have been closed. So I highly recommend going on the closed pull requests and having a look at the conversation. And you can see the author of the pull request, this is the person who created it, they closed it. So that's fine. But you want to make sure that the maintainers aren't just closing the pull request without leaving a comment, because that's not a very friendly project. If they do close it and they say, thank you so much for your contribution, but this is not change we want at the moment, then at least they're explaining why, and that's more friendly. So just make sure you commit to a friendly project, and if the pull request has been closed by the author, then that's also fine. That's their decision. But as you can see, the community here, big shout out to David, Pancasito, and Emmy for helping people with their pull requests. See, everyone's really friendly in the EddieHub community and in the open source community as well. So do get involved. So next along, I'm going to show you discussions. Discussions are very, very similar to issues. So you can see it's a lot of similarities. And once you get used to one, you'll get used to the others. But the difference between an issue and discussion is a discussion can have threaded conversations. So you can see someone's put a comment in and then they've actually had a conversation specifically on that thread, and more threads could be started. So that's the only difference. And also if you write an answer to a discussion and someone accepts your answer, then it appears on your GitHub profile too, which is pretty cool. GitHub Actions is about automation, automating things that are, very repetitive. And it's a great way to run linters that check the indentation and the rules of the formatting of the code. It can run things like automated tests. It can also deploy to the servers as well. In our case, we do have a deploy version that deploys to the GitHub Kubernetes cluster. I'm not going to go into a deep dive into actions. I highly recommend you using it, but to give you an example of what an action looks like and how it's actually not scary, it sounds much scarier than it is. If you go to the .github folder, we've got the issue templates that I mentioned before, and you've also got the workflows. Workflows are the GitHub Actions. So if we have a look at, say, build is where we're going to run the automated tests and so forth. As you can see, it's YAML and it's made up of a few sections. So one is the name, what you want to appear on the Actions tab. Then you got the on, like what's the trigger for this to happen? So here, if someone pushes or someone creates a pull request, we run this, but then we've got some filters only on these files that are in these paths. You don't have to have this, it will just run a lot more. So we're trying to be a bit efficient, a bit green. And then what actually happens, well, it's the jobs. So we've got two jobs, we've got a build job and we've got a test job. And they could have been separate actions potentially as well. And we're going to run it on Ubuntu, and the steps that we're going to do, we're going to check out the code. We're going to set up Node with version 16. We should probably bump that. It's a good contribution that you can make to this project. And then we're going to install the npm dependencies. We're going to run the linter, and then we're going to run the build. Then if it all goes successfully, it will go green. And then if it goes red, then it'll notify the maintainers and also the author of the changes that something has failed, and they can look at see why it's failed. And then we do the same with automated tests as well. So it's actually not that scary. So as you can see in actions, we have a lot of greens. I'm sure we have some reds somewhere. This one hasn't run yet, but we have some reds when things fail. And it's good to know when things fail, so we're all alerted. And the more we can automate, the better. Not to remove the conversations, we still want to have those collaborations, but it's really important to remove the boring conversations and have the interesting, more creative, fun stuff. Project board I have shown you, and security again is another can of worms. It's more for the maintainers, but it's a great way to contribute to as well. Insight, I briefly showed you the community standards, and there are other sections where you can see stats on the project and so forth. And I get settings because I'm a maintainer on the project. So on projects that you're not a maintainer on, you wouldn't see settings. Hopefully that really helps you understand GitHub. And if you would like to learn more about it, any particular section, do let me know. Leave a comment below. Let me know what areas you're more interested in. Did I miss anything? Did I get something wrong? Is there some new feature that you want to know about? I have lots of content on GitHub Actions, on Markdown, and specific areas as well. I also have a GitHub course coming out soon, so stay tuned, watch this space. I can't wait to deep dive on this for the course and give you tips on how to make even more out of GitHub so you can really stand out and accelerate your learning, your career, and so you can get the job and clients and money that you deserve. We also have an GitHub Discord, link in the description below. Come and chat to us between videos and live streams.